Crypto products and NFTs are unregulated and can be highly risky. There may be no regulatory recourse for any loss from such transactions.
Hello and welcome to ET Markets Crypto TV, presented by CoinSwitch Kuber. 15 million. That's the number of Indians trading in crypto, according to blockchain tracking firm Chainalysis. The global cryptocurrency market will hit $5 billion by 2030, more than triple its estimated size of $1.5 billion in 2020, according to a report by Allied Market Research. It's not such a niche hobby anymore. At the height of the pandemic in India, everyday consumers saw crypto as a way to pad their portfolios. Never mind the glaring lack of regulation and the crazy volatility or the huge risks. On the other side, India's government has imposed a very high tax. India's central bank has no love lost for crypto, just like other central banks across the world. China has banned it, and there are other countries that have decided to do just the same. Many other countries are looking at tighter regulation. Amidst all this, what's the future of crypto as an asset? I'm Aloni Bhatt and pleased to welcome my guest today, Charles Dorsey, who's Asia Managing Director at ConsenSys, a blockchain engineering company. He leads ConsenSys projects on central bank digital currencies with Hong Kong Monetary Authority, Bank of Thailand, Bank of Korea, Central Bank of UAE, among others. Prior to this, Charles served as the head of fintech with the Hong Kong government Invest HK. He has 15 years of prior experience in Hong Kong's private sector and is licensed to invest and deal in securities. In 2021, he published BlockKong, a book about blockchain leaders shaping the Hong Kong blockchain ecosystem. He's a certified Bitcoin professional and studied blockchain business strategy at B9 London. Charles, thank you very much for your time today. Charles, I'll just get into the questions. A good asset class is one that has most of these traits. It's liquid, it's stable, it has value, and it has a low transaction cost. Would you say that crypto has the attributes to be a good asset class?
I think the blockchain ecosystem is surfacing and creating multiple new types of asset classes. Of course, we think of the cryptocurrencies and these investment opportunities for some people when they do their right, I would say, due diligence on these. But there is also new asset class, such as the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens, where you can essentially bring art, pictures, music, and movies as a digital asset. So I guess it's not one single family or one single asset. It's a group of new assets, natively digital, sitting on blockchain rails, which are coming before us. They are very experimental, so probably not for everyone. But with the right amount of research, it's probably always rewarding to learn about this new world and understand how this new generation of internet is being built before our eyes.
You said that it does not fit neatly into any conventional asset class definitions because different crypto assets can exhibit features of security, currency, commodity. How does this complicate policy and regulation in terms of design?
That's a great question. The reality is the regulations are not necessarily prepared to fit with the new digital assets. And what we can expect and what we hope from regulators is really to be very inclusive into their research with the industry, with the practitioners, to make sure that we build an ecosystem and a new asset class or set of asset classes which are respectful of the general public, respectful of the regulation in place, but also not being too much constrained by regulations which are not always well adapted to this new asset class. So it's important to be inclusive of the practitioners, inclusive of the general public in the conversations for regulators. It's not an easy step. I think it's important to study, it's important to take actions and bring general terms and framework, but also remain open to make sure that every single economy, which is designing new crypto asset regulations, is making sure it will not penalize itself for the future growth potential of the industry.
But seeing what we are seeing across the world, do you see the mass adoption of crypto as an asset class taking place? Because the barriers to entry into crypto are possibly lower than traditional finance institution and maybe existing financial services. But there still is a language or an internet barrier in many parts of the world. How do you think that the greater adoption of crypto will come about? And what are some of the challenges that we see?
The challenges are the experience on this new Web3, making sure that people have the right tooling. We at ConsenSys are the builders of MetaMask, one of the world's most popular digital asset wallets, which you see behind me, making sure there is the right experience to start explore this fascinating world. The second aspect, I think, which is important is the right regulations to make sure that people will not burn their fingers and not get into some adventures which will be painful and possibly costly as well. So it's a very fast-growing technology. There is a very strong appetite from the public. I think the regulators are really welcomed by the industry also to bring clarity to the industry on how to regulate and how to work. And if you speak with many professionals wherever they are in the world, you will find one common thing is that people are begging for regulations. They want to know how to build their businesses. They want to know which rules should they be respecting and following. So I think regulations are positive, and they will basically trigger the next wave of users into this new internet and new asset class. But they have to be designed and put in place in the appropriate ways to make sure it's not kind of covering and slowing down innovation, and making sure that every ecosystems are remaining in full power of their potentials.
So will regulation have to adapt to crypto, or will crypto adapt to regulation, or you think it's going to be a two-way street?
That's a two-way street, to be honest. I think there is regulations today in place everywhere, and they exist for some reasons, and they've been doing their work and protecting investors and making sure the market stays healthy. But there is also some new regulations, or some regulations which we should be adapting to the world of digital assets. But a healthy market, healthy products, safe products to invest in are only positive, and I think this is where everyone should be aiming for.
India's central bank governor, Shaktikanta Das, he's been a long-term opponent of cryptocurrencies, and he said that crypto has no underlying value, not even that of a tulip, and it is a threat to financial stability. China has banned crypto. India has taxed crypto profits at 30%, levying other taxes, penalties. How does this rhetoric or actions by government impact something that's attempting to stabilize itself as an asset, as a currency, as security?
It's an ecosystem which is growing at very, very fast pace. I cannot comment on the comments from these politicians. Maybe I'm not in the context, and I think we see that over the world, that this very fast-paced ecosystem is having from time to time accelerations and maybe slow down a little bit because regulators trying to get their head around it and define more what will be the best for long-term growth. So it's a learning curve for everyone, including the regulators. When you see some part of the world or different countries either banning and taxing or starting to regulate, I think all of this is eventually positive. You will see the technology surfacing in different contexts, and it's not abnormal that the internet and regulations are different in different places, and that some of the early experimentation get more framed by regulators. So I'm not surprised that regulations come in different flavors and opinions. What is important is to help everyone, all the builders, all the engineers, to understand what they can do, and I think people are really aiming to follow these rules to be put in place by government to ensure long-term growth. And when we look at India from outside, we see this massive pool of talents, engineering talents, which is really very well known and respected worldwide. And And we know as soon as the clarity will come that the energy of the entrepreneurs and the talent of the engineers will only come to fruition and keep growing this market. What is important to capture also is within the market, we can think of new users, but we can think also of the migration of Web 2 companies to Web 3 companies. So think of the e-commerce champion of today. Think of the banks of today and how they can be digital banks, and how these banks and these e-commerce players or social media can support some of the government initiative. If there is plans for CBDCs in India, I guess the central banks of India will want to have the buy-in from the e-commerce players, the buy-in from all the digital society and makers of these digital societies. So the migration from Web 2 to Web 3, the migration to a blockchain-based infrastructure for the society is also a big trigger for the growth of the asset class in general, and the growth of the market and the number of users. So even though you might have today an ecosystem which is built by what we call crypto native, I think this early ecosystem will be enriched and reinforced by essentially a wave of people migrating from the old internet to the new internet, coming with their best practices, coming with their pools of users, millions of users for certain platforms, and just help this ecosystem and underlying asset to mature as well.
Charles, what is the opportunity for governments? What opportunities do they have when it comes to acknowledging crypto as an asset class and then perhaps taxing it accordingly? You know, how is that communicated across to them? Because right now they're just simply going hammer and tongs.
So it's a tough situation for governments. You have new cryptocurrencies which, to a certain extent, are challenging the national currencies. We've seen that the best example is the Libra initiative from Facebook, which was renamed later Diem, where we saw some giants of the IT industry having millions of users, if not billions of users, starting to think of having their own currencies. And this can be a very big risk for a government if people start to trust more a currency from an IT company or a digital platform rather than their domestic currency. This could have a lot of systemic risk repercussions, right? So I think this has really accelerated the thought, the research, and the timeline for many central banks to be working on CBDCs. And the reality is, when you see all your commerce partners, all the neighboring countries starting to upgrade their monetary infrastructure with blockchain and with CBDCs, I think most of the central banks are left with no choice but to eventually also progress to make sure that their economy, their national and domestic champions, which are working and which are doing cross-border business, are also equipped with the best infrastructure for their growth. So it's a little bit of making sure the domestic currency remain the best tool for anyone in the economy to make the economy flourishing. And when you think of the reality of the banking infrastructure today in many countries, it can only benefit from a software update the same way you can update your mobile phone and get new features. I think every economy deserves to have a smarter money, a more efficient money, and a money which will be easier to manage for the government, cheaper to manage. I think there is opportunities for CBDCs not only to be fast money, because fast money and fast payment exist today, but thinking really how you can get smart money and how essentially a CBDC can be supportive of the fintech companies, supportive of the payment industry, for example, in India, by being smarter and easier to handle and cheaper to handle. So it's just as I said earlier, kind of an update or upgrade of the money infrastructure, and that's always very, very impactful.
Okay, I want to talk about CBDCs. I'll come to it in a bit. But what is then the right balance? Because essentially, from what you're speaking, I understand you're talking about maintaining a kind of a balance to be struck in regulation so that we can have an inclusive, interconnected space, but at the same time ensure financial stability, right?
Yes, maybe the balance is coming possibly in the directions I will describe here. We start to see in some countries, and it might be applying here and not applying somewhere else, but you might see in the futures as central bank digital currencies having the life beside regulated stablecoin. A regulated stablecoin will be a stablecoin like a crypto asset which is pegged to the domestic currency issued by a commercial bank, not by the central bank. And you might have essentially a world where the central bank will be issuing money to certain type of players directly from the central banks, and maybe some commercial banks or fintech companies will be able to issue stablecoin in a regulated way by the central banks. So there is many ways to approach this topic. I don't think CBDCs are the single solution. I believe more into multiple type of money being issued following very clear and safe regulations by the regulators. The same way central banks authorize banks to do lending and mortgages and all these kind of activities. I think there is also space for the original currency being minted by the central banks, but also possibly in a more digital driven society, some regulated entities being able to issue as well a domestic currency in the form of a regulated stablecoin.
Right. So there is a lot of possibility, potential for innovation within the space. I want to touch upon the ESG concerns. There are a lot of them when it comes to crypto assets because of their negative impact on the environment. Is that something that we should consider while regulating crypto and debating the adoption of it on a large scale?
I think it's one point in the conversation. The reality today is this technology is moving very fast. You still have Bitcoin, which is using a protocol, a consensus called proof of work, which essentially requires millions of machines, so which has an impact on the environment. Ethereum, which is the second largest crypto asset and the world largest smart contract platform, is migrating to proof of stake. So we'll have a very limited impact on the environment by the summer probably. So all these things are changing, and the economy is aware of that. I think it's important to have an honest conversation also. What is the ESG footprint today of the banking sector in one country? How many branches are open, how many data centers are required for the existing payment system, and making sure that we compare things in a very data-driven way and honest way. A bank has a carbon footprint, a digital asset has a carbon footprint also, but from what we are seeing so far is that the carbon footprint of digital assets sitting on the top of Ethereum will be extremely limited. Since it's moving from proof of work to proof of stake, and will not require computing as much as before. And the numbers of use cases which can sit on the top of Ethereum, should it be decentralized finance, NFTs, gaming, and many other use cases, make it really an interesting platform with very low ESG impact. But it's important to make research, and I hope I bring a little bit of light on this new world of digital assets.
Does the future of crypto assets and blockchain tech exist together? Can one survive without the other?
They are definitely linked together. My prediction is that many of our children will be using crypto assets without even thinking about it. It's a new thing for us because we are witnessing this revolution before our eyes. But as we've seen with many technologies, they will essentially come into the life of our kids in a very natural way. And they will be wondering how come we were dealing with paper cards or cash money in the past, and this will be some kind of funny conversations during holidays as a family. All of this is coming our way very, very quickly, and it's coming quickly because the market pulls it. There is a very good fit between what the technology provides and what the people expect today from their digital experiences and life.
One of the biggest things I think in financial systems, or even when you trust blockchain, is the idea of trust. Do you see across the world an increasing amount of trust in blockchain technologies? Do you see that it'll be easy for people to move from the trust that they've already established? Maybe they were forced to establish, maybe there were no choices in the centralized financial system, and moving away to decentralized finance. Do you see it happening smoothly? Do you see it messing up somewhere?
I think you're really spot on here. Eventually, it all comes down to trust, and everyone have his own trust journey and his own trust appetite and the way we define trust. I don't think people will go look for decentralization. I think people will eventually slowly migrate topics by topics, the trust and the foundations of their trust to new kind of services and new brands, which will happen to be decentralized. But I don't think decentralization is the first motive for people to start to migrate to this kind of infrastructure. But if you look at the way we trust online services today, for so many things. Like if I take a very nice picture of my family and I want to keep it safe, or I want to make sure I'm not losing it, I will send it to myself to my email address. And I trust the email provider I'm using really, really, really much for things which are very close to my heart, right? And from time to time, I will find myself having some money sitting into a wallet of a fintech company which is reputable and which is servicing us well and is clear. So I think we will have different level of trust for different things. Everyone will remain there, but probably we're going to start to spread the usage of different applications for different type of trust we require. I trust the government for certain things, and I don't see anyone replacing it, but I'm open to trust private organizations, or maybe in the future smart contracts or pieces of software or communities for other things. So all of this is really evolving, but you're really spot on. It's really the trust factor, and how people will feel I can actually trust this organization, and they will probably understand step by step that the decentralized foundations make it really trustable by design, those new brands.
So it's a journey, right, Charles? I mean, there's not going to be a moment where, we're all going to find that trust. I think for each person, it's going to be a journey. How do you see the adoption then happening across the world? Because at the end of the day, it's decentralized, it's borderless.
It has been growing slowly and suddenly very rapidly. So to give you a sense of the growth of this space, one of the products of ConsenSys is MetaMask. You see here on my t-shirt, this little fox. In the summer of 2020, there was about 700,000 users of MetaMask, so close to 1 million. 1 year later, 12 months later, we were at 10 million users. So you see really the exponential growth, illustrating the exponential age we are in, and how much there is traction for this kind of technology. So I think we're going to keep going through the same type of growth, and the growth is massive today. It's still very early days, but when you look at the adoption of the internet from the late 90s to today, and what's the progress the blockchain technologies and services I've been doing so far, it's really a similar pattern. So we should expect many 2-3x per year in many parts of the world. And as I was mentioning earlier, I don't think it's going to be a massive change for people. It's just going to be, instead of using a centralized service, you're going to start to use a decentralized service, but eventually you will go to the best service providers with best features, the best user experience, the best fees. And when it comes to good deal, there is a lot of potential to reinvent a lot of the existing banks, a lot of the existing game and various applications on blockchain powered by crypto assets, and the market will follow. So growing slowly but strongly, and suddenly very rapidly.
All right. Charles Dorsey, thank you so very much for your thoughts and for your time today. Slow and steady, crypto moves ahead. A huge adoption huge explosion in adoption across the world. And, as per evangelists like you, it is only meant to continue. Thank you very much for your time.
Crypto products and NFTs are unregulated and can be highly risky. There may be no regulatory recourse for any loss from such transactions.